Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. And obviously, I'm recording this in grand old Ohio Stadium, aka the Horseshoe, where Ohio State just wrapped up its 2025 spring game. A little special edition of the Tim May Show in terms of we've got a little update on the quarterback situation at Ohio State, which has national implications, maybe worldwide implications. I'm not leaving you worldwide people out of this. But the bottom line is Julian Sayin came into this spring game, I think, needing to prove a lot of things, not just to himself, but to onlookers, to the coaching staff, to his fellow players, based on the way his spring had gone, sort of up and down. When we got to watch him in a full scrimmage a week earlier, he looked very uncomfortable, in my opinion, at times in the pocket. Wasn't consistent in the Student Appreciation Day scrimmage. Even on Friday morning, when we got to watch the team work out a little bit in Ohio Stadium before the main event, they were working out in front of high school coaches. But even then, he didn't really, jump off the chart at you. But boy, in the spring game with 40,000 people in the stands, it was a little bit blustery, chilly for sure. It was like in the 30s when the morning started. It was in the 40s for the game. But Julian Sayin bloomed, in my opinion. He bloomed on his final shot to prove something in the spring in front of a big crowd. And he led several touchdown drives. Looked so much more poised, so much more comfortable. He's a redshirt freshman quarterback out of Carlsbad, California. And obviously, his background. He went to Alabama first. Nick Saban decided to retire. Julian Sayin jumped right into the portal and basically couldn't wait to get to Ohio State. Bounced to Ohio State quickly, and was considered to be the heir apparent to Will Howard, last year's superstar, who developed into a superstar for Ohio State at quarterback, is now waiting for the National Football League draft. But most of us expected Julian Sayin to take the opportunity by the horns as spring practice started. From all accounts, didn't really do that. Lincoln Kienholz, a much bigger, stronger version of Lincoln Kienholz from 3 years ago when he first showed up at Ohio State, is going into his third year, has made this a competition and did make this a competition. He looked so much more poised in the Student Appreciation Day a week ago. But in the spring game here on Saturday, April 12th in Ohio Stadium, like I said, in front of a big crowd, it was Julian Sayin who looked ready to roll from the get-go. Lincoln Kienholz settled down as the scrimmage went on, and both of these guys ran the first team and ran the second team, and kind of like alternated in that regard. But Julian, for the most part, was pretty comfortable throughout. Lincoln had a shaky start, but got going and led a couple of scoring drives. And then, of course, Tavian St. Clair, who Ryan Day basically has said isn't quite ready for prime time yet. And I'm saying that, I'm paraphrasing Ryan Day, but really, as the scrimmage went on, he also showed why he was considered one of the elite quarterback prospects coming out in the 2025 recruiting season, and settled down as the scrimmage went on. And we got to remember, he was playing pretty much with maybe high seconds, third, maybe fourth team members as the scrimmage went on, but he ended up ending it with a touchdown pass. So, I think Ohio State feels pretty good about his quarterback position from the standpoint of having three guys capable of playing on this level. Two guys may be ready before that third guy, Tavian St. Clair. But they needed somebody to emerge as this spring went on, because I'm telling you, that Texas opener, this is no offense to Grambling, but they're not opening with Grambling. They do play Grambling, but they're opening with the team that really went toe-to-toe with them in the national semifinal just 3.5, 4 months ago in Texas, hosting Texas in that season opener on August 30th. And I think it has put some urgency in the sense of you got to know who your quarterback is sooner rather than later. Do I expect Ryan Day and his staff to necessarily name a number one or a starter in the next several weeks? No, I don't. They could easily do that, but early in preseason camp, when it starts in late July, early August, I think you're going to see them move quickly to who's going to be that starter, at least for the opening game, because there is a sense of urgency there. But of course, as we learned last year, what happens in the regular season doesn't necessarily portend what's going to happen in the playoffs. The key is getting to the playoffs. So as important as that Texas game is, one way or the other, you don't want to look You don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing. And I tell you, man, there was a moment in the spring game, and I asked Ryan Day about it, and I'm going to have his comments about it here in a minute on the Tim May Show, and talk to him about just Julian Sayin and how he came on, but also I asked him about, they're between the first and second quarter of this spring game, they awarded the ring boxes to the outgoing players, 12 or 14 of whom might get drafted, maybe more than that, in the NFL draft coming up the end of this month. But they were aligned in midfield across the 50-yard line. What a ridiculous group of not just really good football players, Will Howard, Jack Sawyer, J.T. Tuimoloau, Travion Henderson, Quinshawn Judkins, right on down, Emeka Egbuka. Are you kidding me? What an array of talented football players, but what an array of leaders. And it was a great example of the maturity that 2024 team had, that you can't just poof create. You can't even really get it through the transfer portal. It has to come to fruition for each team in its own time from one year to the next. And that's always been the beauty of college football. You can have so much more different a team than you had the year before, both better or worse, because of matriculation, either the National Football League or in the transfer portal, or just guys running out of eligibility. Yeah, even though you got 6- and 7-year guys at some schools still today because of the COVID situation, you eventually do run out of eligibility. But it was just shows you how far this team has got to come from a 2025 from a maturity standpoint to have a shot at repeating as national champions. The last team to do that obviously was a few years ago, was Georgia. It's tough to do. And Georgia barely got by Ohio State, as we remember, in that national semifinal game, back when it was just 4 teams that played. Now, of course, there's 12. You can make a few mistakes in the regular season and still get in it. But to get in it and win it, you've got to have a mature, hitting on all cylinders football team that's weathered some storms. And so, the first sign of a storm is coming on August 30th. And Ohio State's got to get ready for that, hosting Texas in what will be one of the games of the year. Too bad it'll be the first game of the year, but one of the games of the year nationally. Definitely a showcase, and definitely to a certain extent a harbinger of what's to come. But both teams are going to be young in that game in a lot of key positions and are going to need to grow. With that said, some other observations I had from this spring game, Ohio State was, boy, if they started a game tomorrow, it sure looks like Austin Seerveld, sort of the do-it-all sixth man on the offensive line last year, and going into the spring looked like he was going to be that same guy, but he sure looks like the guy at right tackle, at least today. They're waiting on, for example, Phillip Daniels to really come into his own, the transfer from Minnesota. He only started a handful of games last year at Minnesota. He definitely has a look to be that right tackle. But Austin Seerveld sure seems to be the guy coming out of the spring. And Ian Moore has made major strides on both ends, left tackle and right tackle. So we'll see where that goes. Ethan Anianwa, the transfer from Rice, appears to be going to be taking Donovan Jackson's place. I was going to say Josh Simmons, who might be the first left tackle taken in the draft later this month. Obviously he got hurt midway through the season last year, suffered a season-ending knee injury at Oregon, and Donovan Jackson ended up sliding out there a couple of games later against Penn State and became one of the best left tackles in college football. He already was established as one of the best left guards. But the bottom line is those are key guys to replace both tackles. The right tackle replacing Josh Fryer, who started every game last year at right tackle for the Buckeyes. Talking about Iron Men, he was definitely that. And then on the offensive side, we already touched on it. Anybody watching knows they gave limited reps to James Peoples, who would appear to be the first-string running back coming out of the spring. With C.J. Donaldson, the transfer from West Virginia, ran hard also today. Sam Williams-Dixon, who jumped in the transfer portal and jumped back out, after the season was over. Young man from Pickerington, Ohio. He had some good moments. But man, every time you've gotten a chance to see the running backs this spring, there's one name that stood out in terms of catching your eye, not necessarily being the guy, but catching your eye. And it's a fellow by the name of Bo Jackson. Yeah, Bo Jackson. reincarnate. He knows he could be if he changes his number and moves to 34 instead of that 25, that Carlos Snow lookalike number. But if he moves to 34, he could be making you think a lot of things about the former Bo, because he runs very hard. He's a compact looking dude, extremely strong, first year freshman. I think he really caught his stride as the spring went on. I know Carlos Lachlan, the running backs coach, likes him a lot, but he likes those other guys too. And then, wide receiver-wise, Quincy Porter, what can you say? Was he a late bloomer in the spring? I'm not sure you'd call him a late bloomer, but we only got to see a few scrimmages from the media standpoint. But Quincy Porter caught your eye, also number 11, and didn't expect him to play as much as he did in the spring game, because the day before he was wearing what looked like a "don't participate too much" jersey. But he caught your eye. Jeremiah Smith had a few pass catches just to please the crowd. And, we all know what he's all about. Carnell Tate, like I've said earlier, he's emerged as not just a go-to dude. He did that last year, but he's also emerging as a leader in that wide receiver room and really for the team, because, as he'll be the first to tell you, the loss of Emeka Egbuka from that wide receiver room is huge. Forget about the stats Emeka Egbuka brought to the fore. Think about the leadership he brought. And Carnell Tate, I think, is looking forward to being that guy other guys can lean on in that room. Brandon Ennis had a really good spring game, capped off, what was a good spring, because now he knows it's his time. He's been waiting his time behind some guys who looked like they were leaving and then came back. So Brandon Ennis has moved to the number 1, lost about 10 pounds down to 201 pounds, looks really fast and quick out there. We'll see where he goes. Mylan Graham had a great catch and run for a touchdown. Definitely a guy who's made strides through the spring, but has a spring in his step, without a doubt, once he gets the ball in his hands. Then on the defensive side of the ball, you got to see Devin Sanchez, a highly touted five-star cornerback out of Galena North Shore High School outside Houston, Texas. He looks the part, but they're starting corners with Jermaine Matthews and taking the place of the departing Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosin. That's a really good pair to start with. They've used Jermaine Matthews in the slot, and they did it again today, maybe covering those slot receivers, but he can line up and go one-on-one with the guys out wide also. Lorenzo Styles Jr. I gotta be honest about Lorenzo Styles Jr. I wasn't sure about his overall talent when you compared him to his bigger, I was going to say larger, definitely taller, younger brother, and Sonny Styles, the starting linebacker returning for the Buckeyes. But Lorenzo Styles Jr. has really made big strides. Played so much in the run to the championship last year as that nickelback, doing that a lot. But he just looks like a playmaker out there now, and it's cool to watch him. Obviously, the defensive line is a work in progress. When you looked at the 4 guys they lost, all 4 starters from last year, the depth at defensive tackle behind Caden McDonald and Edric Houston is going to be job one for this football program. Maybe even in the transfer portal, trying to find maybe 1 or 2 guys that can come in and make an immediate impact in the depth chart, because it definitely drops off in that respect after your starters. And then at the defensive ends, Caden Curry didn't play a whole lot today. Kenyatta Jackson, he played a little bit more, but they really like what those 2 guys have brought to the fore, and then some guys coming up under them. I mean, I really think you're going to like how that group develops. It's going to be a different look compared to Sawyer and Tui Moloau, with Kenyatta Jackson coming in and Caden Curry to a certain extent last year. But, with C.J. Hicks at the edge, he made some plays as the scrimmage went along also, and there will be other guys stepping up. So Zion Gray, right on down the line, there will be guys stepping up as the summer workouts go in his preseason camp. But they really would like to get a player or 2 from the portal, especially at the defensive tackle positions, the nose and the 3 technique, that could maybe help them from a one of anything else, the depth standpoint. And Malik Hartford looks like he's going to be the starter next to Caleb Downs, at least coming out of the spring. at replacing Lathan Ransom. That's a good look in my opinion. There are other guys that are contending there also and stuff, but under the tutelage of new defensive coordinator Matt Patricia, who's claim to fame with the New England Patriots. He has a few Super Bowl rings to show from that, being a defensive coordinator there and filling other roles as it went on. They're going to mix and match. They're really big. You're going to be big into mixing and matching based on what the other team is putting on the field, etc., putting guys in position to make plays. But this was not a fair day to judge the defense because they were basically held to milk toast when it came to what they were allowed to do. Then when you get to the linebackers, they've got some young guys really coming on. I mean, I totally expect Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese to be the starters in that 4-2-5 look, if in fact that's what they go off with in that first game against Texas, first play. But Peyton Pierce, kid from Texas, second-year player, really made big strides as this spring went on, and he was roaming the field again on Saturday. And around that, TJ Alford, another young guy, and Riley Pettijohn. Every time you looked out there, he was making another play in the spring as the spring progressed. So I think James Laurinaitis feels pretty good about the up and coming depth at that those linebacker spots. But past that, like I promised a minute ago, I asked Ryan Day about whether he maybe said something to Julian Sayin after that scrimmage the week earlier in front of the students, the Student Appreciation Day, whether in essence that really wasn't good enough, if we won't have another term, because Ryan Day doesn't pull punches, man, with his quarterbacks. He's never been one, because so much is expected of you. So you're under so much pressure, and a coach talking harshly may not be the correct term, but a coach talking sternly to you should be the least of your worries. And it appears whatever the message was, it got through to Julian Sayin in a week's time, because he looked like a different guy out here playing on this field. And then I also asked Ryan, but boy, you look out there in midfield, all those guys between the first and second quarters when they were awarded their rings. Wow, that's a lot of talent, a lot of leadership going out the door. And he addressed that part also about this as he's been emphasizing for a while now. This is a new team, a totally different team. They have their own path to run. We'll see if they can run it. But without further ado, let's get to his comments post-game of the 2025 Ohio State Scarlet and Gray game. Two quickies. Number one, did you have a talk with Julian maybe after last week's Student Appreciation Day of kind of like getting him going to a certain extent? Because he seemed a lot different, as people have pointed out today, number one. And then number two, when you look at those guys lined up at midfield between the first and second quarter, does it put in stark perspective what a team you had last year, but wow, what you're replacing?
Yeah. First, I think the quarterbacks would tell you that I have conversations with them on a daily basis, especially when they make mistakes in practice. But it's our job and it's my job to make sure that they understand how hard it is to be the quarterback at Ohio State and the expectations. You are not allowed to lose a game. You're not allowed to have a bad day, and so it's really, really hard. That's just the way it is. But as we know, the rewards are endless, and Will's a great example of that. CJ's a great example of that. You go through the list, but and so I think the thing for Julian is he's realized he's had some good days. He's had some days he's learning from, but a big trait of great quarterbacks is they're resilient. They keep coming back and they keep learning. If you keep making the same mistake over and over again, not good. So, but I think all the guys have been that way this spring. So, but good to see him respond the way he did and rebound from a couple of practices early on. There's no question. Not just the talent, it's the experience. These guys are grown men, and in our recruiting process, we evaluate who the players are in terms of their talent, but then we quickly evaluate who they are as young men. And we try to bring in mature young men because, when you're here at Ohio State, you're held to a higher standard. You got to sit up a little straighter, you got to look people in the eye, you got to make great decisions. And so that's important. And these guys came in that way, but they came in as young men, and now they're men. And you just see them, and you just makes you smile. Not only are they going to be great football players in the NFL, but they're going to be great citizens, great ambassadors of Ohio State, great husbands, great dads, and they're champions. So, it puts a smile on your face when you see it.